You guys got anything going on for the weekend? No parties or anything? I guess we'll have a Labor Day here coming up pretty soon. But that only makes sense if you have a weekend like Monday class. All right, there we go. So HDMI. That should do it. All right, cool. Well, somehow you guys have already seen the first video. Oh, that's always fun. You already saw the refugee video. Anybody here want to be an international social worker? Like overseas? Where would you want to go, do you think? Like any you said Iraq, or did you say anywhere? They were hiring for a social worker in Iraq. A few years ago, it was like $110,000 a year. I applied for it, but they usually only hire you if you have a military background. So it's like, that's some good money. And they don't tax you if you're working overseas through the VA. I don't think you pay U.S. taxes because you're not living in the U.S. So that was a good job, but it's hard to get some of those. Peace Corps is one of them. We had a decent...
About what case management is and what
10 jobs you didn't know you could do as a social worker. So, shoot. Oh, that's right. Okay. So I'm going to close this. We're into chapter 1. Has anybody used the order a free book link for this semester yet? Supposedly, they have it ready to go for you. So I'll tell you where it is if you want to maybe write it down. They were sending the email within the department. So, there it is. So, information regarding free textbooks. So, the first place you want to go to is called shopcentralstate.com. See if I can get it for you. So once you get to here, shopcentralstate.com, select textbooks. I don't even know where that is. Probably right here. There you go. Select textbooks. Click find materials. So this class is social work. 1100. So it's the very first one. You guys are afternoon, so you're 2H. The morning is 1. Then you would click like find materials for this course. They have you type in your stuff. You can either rent it or own it. I think if you rent it, you have to put in a credit card. If you own it, pretty sure they'll cover it either way. Verify with your advisors. Yeah, there it is. Buy digital. Because that one's rent digital. It'll probably disappear at like the end of the semester. When you add it to your cart, when you check out, that's where it gets kind of like, you have to select Credit card information required for rentals, but you select in-store pickup or shipping to provide an address. It could take 24 to 48 hours. Oh yeah, view card. And I'm pretty sure you can try those codes, but if they're paying for it anyway, it should be not just cheap, but free. That you have to pay for. I don't even know what it is, so I just skip it. But then you need to know your student ID number. I think it's on your all's like little card, right? Yeah, I think it's on the card. And then after you fill that in, the very final thing you choose is select the best format, pick your preference, and then you select book advance as your payment option. So hopefully that works for you guys. Let me know if it works. Anybody get the book yet?
Yeah, I did.
Did it work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So any questions about that? Sure. So we'll go in reverse if it lets me. So you want to go to shopcentralstate.com. So you start out at shopcentralstate.com. It takes you to that website. Shopcentralstate.com. From there, you click on textbooks. That's how you get your free textbook. If you want it, you can buy it if you'd like, but I think it's crazy they're offering them free. You click your department here. We're social work. So you just put that in. The first class is intro is 1100. For our book, or the afternoon, so it's the second class. The morning class is the first one. You find materials from there. You can either rent it. Which one did you do? Rent or right? If they're going to pay for either one, I would just get the most expensive one, right? It's a party for everybody. If they actually do it, I don't trust sometimes, but they probably should. You buy it, then you click add it to your card, and then on the checkout, you just make sure to click book advance as your payment option. So as long as you have your student ID number and you click book advance, they should just did they email it to you or did they? Did you get a hard copy of the book?
Not yet.
Okay. Because I don't know if all the free books would be hard copies. So if you wanted a hard copy, I just clicked digital. I just put the first chapter up for you guys anyway as I scanned it for you. And I got the PowerPoint here. It looks like this. Any questions about buying it? Cool. So the first chapter kind of gets into our paper a little bit. See if I can get the attendance sheet going. It's not really working. Who wants to be, so there's several options when you become a social worker, and the first chapter kind of gets into it. This also is like your first paper that's where you pick what kind of social worker you would like to be. At the bachelor's level, they always train you to be like a generic social worker, which could be working in food security or a homeless shelter or affordable housing or medical field or one of many. So actually, I'm going to do the YouTube here that would be like social work. And they have an NASW website that comes up. It kind of breaks down all the different, well, not that, but yeah. And if you wanted to cite one of these for your paper, you could. You just gotta like go to the APA. The easiest way to learn how to cite things is through Purdue OWL shows you how to do APA. So let's see if this works for them. Anybody wanted to be a school social worker in there? There's actually a good set of videos that shows you how to be a school social worker. But here's from the actual NASW website. It breaks down all the different social work areas.
Social workers are dedicated to enhancing human well-being and helping meet the basic needs of all people. We work to empower people who are vulnerable, oppressed, or living in poverty. Social work has been around for more than a century. Our profession has been instrumental in pushing for major social reforms, including Social Security, minimum wage, and equal rights for minorities, women, and people who are LGBTQIA. We need social workers now more than ever. Today, social work professionals are tackling issues that include income equality, access to health care, and care for our aging population. Social work is one of the fastest growing professions in the country. There are more than 700,000 social workers in the United States, and that number is expected to rise to almost 800,000 by the year 2028. Social work is incredibly diverse. You'll find social workers in mental health, substance abuse treatment, healthcare, family and children's services, aging, in schools, and in local, state, and federal government.
So here's like the list. Any of these stand out to one of you guys? You've got mental health, if you wanted to become a counselor, social work, therapist, healthcare, hospitals, like the medical profession, family services, gerontology, so that's working with the aging population, and then school social workers, and then government social workers, even like VA. So if you chose one of those in particular to write your quick 2-page paper about in 2 weeks, do a search on one of those and find some articles that describe it. Here's a quick side sheet for you guys. So in our PowerPoint, they kind of break a few of these down. We're a helping profession, so we help promote social change. Social workers also enhance problem solving and human relationships. If you got your degree and did counseling specialty, you might have to do like marital counseling or family counseling, or if you choose to. We're trained to become every kind of social worker. You could be a homeless advocate. You could be work with affordable housing, food deserts. We were talking about that this morning in class. Does anybody know what a food desert is?
Basically,
Yep. So if you go more than 1.5 miles to get your food, which is easy in a car, but a little harder if you're either taking the bus or walking it, because not everybody has a car, or your car breaks down. I've had mine run out of electric lately. They don't run out of gas now. They run out of electric, which is weird. You can pick up your food. I lived in Kennedy Heights in Cincinnati. That's considered a food desert. So we're trying to push for like more healthy options for food, and instead of like buying at the grocery or the gas station. Like gas stations are kind of adding stuff in, but they really don't have the healthy stuff you need. So that would enhance problem solving, human relationships, and facilitate empowerment and liberation of people to enhance well-being. So we're going to do a PowerPoint on self-care here pretty soon, because I'm going to stress that as you all start off as college students, or you're trying to finish, you got to remember to take care of yourself. Like eat enough vegetables and drink enough water. Take your vitamins. Things that like we always hear and we almost like make fun of it, but it's important to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. Like if you want to be a good social worker, you actually have to. I try to get out and do my 8 or 10,000 steps every day, so it doesn't have to be running. Just walking for maybe a half an hour to an hour at most, and get that taken care of. Staying hydrated, eating vegetables, and then when you take care of yourself, you can take care of others. If we're having a lot of drama going on in our life, it's hard to take care of others, if we have health problems and whatnot. So social workers respond to the demands of living and promote citizens' rights. We also work with pretty much every group there is possible. I can't think of a group social workers don't work with, but here it says individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. So it depends on which route you choose. I showed you the video with our population at St. Leo's in Cincinnati. We have a refugee resettlement population to do. Really, it's a form of international social work because, like with Catholic Charities, they receive folks from Burundi. They actually went to Tanzania first and then came to America. And then, as the social worker, you would write up ways that we can connect them with the different services they need. So, just making sure you're an empowering individual with them. If you did want articles, say you are choosing the area of refugee resettlement as a social worker, that is what I wrote my dissertation on. So you can do a search engine and include some of that stuff. So this is my to write a dissertation. It's a 155-page paper. As I remember, in undergrad they give us 5, 8, or 10-page papers, and I would get pissed. So this thing is your 155-page paper, which is like 6 30-page papers in a row. It kind of sucks, but so yeah, if you were looking for articles on that, I wrote a couple other articles on refugee resettlement. You could cite that one if you did. Go into Google Scholar and you just press on quote. So you do the quotations and then say like in the middle of the paper, you want to say cite just the last name and then the year it was written. At the very end of the paper, that's when you put all the information. But if you ever quote something to make sure you don't get caught plagiarizing, is you're allowed to quote people. You just got to cite the people. So like you can write their stuff in, and of course, always give your own opinion. You don't want to just like regurgitate something somebody else wrote. Yeah, some of the citations I had, we just wrote this article this year, grandparents raising grandchildren. And, at the end, we have to have tons of citations about it. So when you get into a journal, you have the very end has all of our citations that we use to write that. So really, you guys are just picking a few articles from Google Scholar. So you would go in and type like, what do social workers do? Go to scholar.google.com. Maybe you want to write about depression and social work. And you want to do articles that are in the past 5 years. I guess when you guys were in the 8th grade, if you're freshmen, or in the past 2 years when you were seniors, or if you only want stuff from this year, you got stuff from 2021. I like articles a few years old. You can get the full text of them here on the side. If you see PDF, it means you can download and own a copy of that. And then, yeah, you cite it. It's only 2 pages. So maybe pulling a piece like, here's what a social worker who works with folks that have depression would do. And this one's about postpartum depression after you have a baby. Now they have postpartum depression for men who also just had a baby, as there's some research showing that, you never sleep. You got lots of additional tasks that you're not used to, and then you got to go do your job and do your schoolwork, which is tough. So, anyway, those are some ideas for your paper coming up. I know you still have like 10 days until it's due. But other stuff social workers do, we are professional helpers. So one thing you can't call yourself until you have a bachelor's of social work and a license in social work is a social worker. So it's like a copyrighted term. If you say, hey, I'm a social worker, you need to have a bachelor's and a license. And they made that kind of law several years ago. When you apply for your license, they say, did you ever work at a job where you called yourself a social worker? And the answer is always no, because they're trying to incriminate you. They're like, you can't call yourself a social worker until you have a license and a degree that's social work. So professional helpers help demonstrate genuine concern and positive regard for others. This is getting into like our code of ethics and our values. That's your second paper, actually. We possess personal qualities that support social work with others. We value working in partnership. So a lot of times I've worked with homeless shelters, I've worked with food pantries, work with the families, work with the schools, meet with the principals. Anybody have a social worker in your family? Like somebody you knew that you're like, I want to do what they do. Is that why you chose social work? Or is that, it's cool because there's a lot of jobs. Probably the best paying is like medical social work, and maybe the worst paying is being a case manager. So you get your bachelor's but not a license, you could still be a case manager for like $22,000 a year. It's all relative. I will always recommend getting your master's in social work because it's only one more year after you get the bachelor's. It's like I've done 4 years, I can do one more and be done with it. If you got a bachelor's in social work. This is how we train you guys here. Generalist just means like generic. Like I'm a generic social worker. I know how to do everything. I know how to connect people with food stamps, with housing, with different stuff. You'll utilize generic practice process. You'll recognize potential for change at multiple system levels. View behavior in context of social environments. What do you guys think that means? That's a tough term, this one right here. You view behavior in context of social environments. It's a lot to take in.
I don't know, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but is it like basically recognizing what goes on around them and what causes their behavior to change? Or
Yes.
that's it?
That's it. That's exactly it. So like when we had refugees come from Burundi, Africa, and a lot of them had witnessed a civil war and some of even their family members get killed, we take that into consideration when working with individuals and families that experienced a civil war. They probably have post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. When our refugees got food from the food pantry, we at first wondered why. We're like, man, they must be super hungry. Well, they were stacking like cans in their basement to the ceiling because they were used to being in war when you run out of food, because it's hard to get food delivered. You know what I mean? It's hard to get food that you need in the middle of a war. Or did any of you guys experience in the pandemic shortages on the grocery store shelves? Like toilet paper, apparently that's starting to happen again. Somebody said that they're already running out of toilet paper and limiting the number of toilet papers you can buy again. Wasn't that like 2 years ago that happened? You all might have been seniors. Were you juniors or seniors?
Juniors.
Damn. That's the worst I've ever seen it in a store in America. You're used to like all the shelves being stacked, Now, supposedly, there's even like fake pictures of full shelves. I think this was somewhere in Ohio too. Where is that? Probably under images. And somebody like put up a, God, where is that? Of course, I'm not going to find it when I want to, but somebody had like a picture poster board. But yeah, I don't think I ever saw an image like this growing up in America, you know, like, and most of the stores going out of business. And that was in the Wall Street Journal. So that was legit enough. If I wanted to, they want me to pay for it. Or like this. Let's see. Did you guys see shelves like that in your community last year? I don't think I ever seen that before. Unless if it was like going out of business. So food security, food insecurity, that's some of the stuff that comes up. So other jobs you can do in social work. She has an accent here, so I was trying to figure out which country she was from, or if she's from America, but
worker, and I share my experiences, both social work and non-social work related, here on the channel. Please go ahead and subscribe if you're interested. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 10 different titles that social workers may go by. So it's interesting, but a lot of the time, you probably have come across a social worker a couple of times where they would not have called themselves a social worker, because there are some roles that will call you a social worker, but most of the time you're called something else, even though your qualification is social work. So this will be really short, but really educative as well. Like, so the next time you meet someone that's called this particular profession title, then you would know that it could be that they're actually a social worker, and maybe one of these professions is something that you're wanting to do, but you don't even know that social work can get you into that. So yeah, I'm sure this will be helpful. Go ahead and subscribe if you're new to my channel, because like, I promise you quality videos. Like, my videos are super helpful, if I do say so myself. There's a subscribe button just down the bottom of this video. It's usually in red, and there's a thumbs up button underneath this video as well. Go ahead and click it and give me a like. Anyways, let's get right into it. So the first role that I would mention would be a case manager. So for case management jobs, most jobs would require to have a social work degree, but some don't. You can have different kinds of experiences to get into it, but you could also have a social work background and be called a case manager. I have a whole video talking about what case management is and what it looks like. I'll link it in the description box for people that are interested. Another name that social workers might go by is an assessor. So organizations like the Child Protection System here in Australia, they have, people that go to different homes to assess families and identify their needs. Here in Australia as well, we have a thing called the ACAT team. It stands for the Aged Care Assessment Team, and they're all assessors. So they go to people that are above the age of 65. They go to their homes and they assess them to determine their needs, and then they try and put supports in place. So then most of them are actually social workers as well, and nurses, but there are some social workers in there. So then you may come across an assessor who has a social work qualification. Case workers, so a lot of the staff that work in the child protection here in Australia go by the name of case workers. Most of them have social work degrees. Researchers in community councils and universities and stuff like that may have a social work background as well. Policy officers in councils, in hospitals, in big organizations like child protection, housing, different places, they could have a social work background as well. Students and lecturers could have a social work degree and be social workers, or may have been social workers in the past. A mental health worker, they could have a social work background as well. Here in Australia, if you want to become a mental health social worker, then you have to go through the accreditation process through the AASW, but having a social worker degree would be mandatory as well. It could be called a counsellor. So that's like my role at the moment is kind of, counselor-ish as well. So I can be called a counselor as well, even though I'm a social worker. You could be called an intake worker. I do intake work. I am an intake worker / domestic violence crisis intervention worker / counselor. So those are all titles that I can be called, even though I only have a background in social work. Could also be called a therapist. So therapist, counselor, quite similar. Therapists could be psychologists, they could also be social workers. So yeah, those were 10 professions that you may not have known that social work covers.
All right. So those are just some other ideas of what in social work we do. Here's the purpose of social work. So a big one is that we enhance social functioning of all of those, again, individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. We also link a client to the system with the needed resources. If it is housing, if it is jobs, especially during the pandemic with all the layoffs, if it is food security, the list goes on and on. Medical services. We would like, as social workers, to improve the operation of the social service delivery network. So to be able to get the flow going. If somebody has an unmet need, identifying what that unmet need is and getting them to it. When I lived in El Salvador and Nicaragua, it was in the late 90s, right after a hurricane. So a big need was really housing and clean drinking water. As a lot of the systems were destroyed by the hurricane. So we were helping put up a water filtration system along with latrines that did not carry malaria. So when I lived there, I even helped dig and put those together. When I visited in India, we would do some education services as social workers. So it depends on where the unmet need is as to where you want to serve as a social worker. We also promote social justice through the development of social policy. So that's where government social workers and like social work advocates show up and become helpful. There's a lot of goals in social work. So a big one is enhancing people's capacities to resolve problems, cope with their current situation, and then eventually function effectively. So we want to empower them to empower themselves. So doing things that would empower a social worker, to empower the client, to empower themselves. So we ultimately don't want someone dependent on our services. We want to be able to set them free and do this on their own. So in doing that, we're linking the clients with needed resources, improve the service delivery network, we're promoting social justice through policy. There's a few others I have on this next one. So with human needs, we mentioned before universal basic needs. So if it is food, water, shelter, those are the three big universal needs. It's like food, water, shelter, housing. If you notice during the pandemic, they had a eviction moratorium. So because there are so many jobs, they made it federal policy to lay off people that we wanted to keep them in their homes. So they stopped the eviction process because we wanted to make sure people stayed in safe housing until the pandemic was over, even if they lost their job. There could be motivational needs, lifespan needs, identity development needs, cultural strengths, physical environment, and social justice. And the book details it in this next slide with so different institutions here. The family institution, the function is, so you go home to your family, the primary personal care and mutual assistance systems between children and parents, and between the family and the unit of society. So our parents raise us to we're about 18, help us with that food, water, shelter. Some people get emancipated at 17, so you could start working on your own and even join the military at the age of 17 and go into the Air Force. But ideally, you're in a family institution until you're about 18, along with an educational institution. And what they're supposed to do is socialization and preparation for a productive participatory citizenship. So you meet your friends there, you learn different jobs or skills that you're good at, you find out if you're good at math or science or social studies. Then there's the political institutions. So when you're 18, you get to vote for the people that are in office. Hopefully they count all the votes, and then the authoritative allocation of public social goals and values. Like we find ways to get the services out there. So in communities, the important thing is like trash pickup and sanitization and things of that nature, like making sure there's safety and security in the neighborhood and clean, efficient neighborhoods. There's also another system. This is showing in social work, we look at large systems and how we're all connected. Like you start out with just yourself. So that's like me. You could have then your family, if you've got spouse, then you have some kids. They start getting, you're all incorporated within these different systems. If you have 1, 2, or 3 kids, or none, or you adopt some, then you've got like school, and sometimes they even cross over like just halfway, like government kind of dips into almost everything. So it's just showing how the different systems like connect and how we interact with them. Religious institution, again, that can kind of cut into several pieces, but not all of it. We have freedom of religion here. So we can choose whatever religion we'd like to practice. But the idea is showing all these different systems and how we're in the middle of all of it, and how it affects us, how if government was kind of the way that they're saying the Burundians had kind of control over all their lives or what's going on in Afghanistan right now, it can take over your autonomy as an individual, like your own private. I think some had mentioned that they're starting to enforce wearing burqas in Afghanistan again. Does anybody know what a burqa is? Have you guys heard that? Right. Yeah. So it's like a humble religious thing, which if you choose to wear it, that's great. And some people do choose to wear them. Some people choose not to. But I think in the country, what they're doing is forcing women to wear it because they don't want women to show any part of their body. I think you're allowed to show that part of your body. And it's like, it's got the eyeballs and that's it. And it's kind of in a religious text somewhere, but they had killed somebody yesterday who wasn't wearing one. So it kind of became a little bit more overreaching government stuff instead of having autonomy where you get to make your decision to wear it. If you want to, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay too. It's like, no, you weren't wearing it. You're tempting a man. You gotta go. And that's where the concern comes in as an international community. If there's genocide from that or something of that nature. So also the social welfare institution, we work in this as social workers, but we respond to health, education, and well-being needs of societal members. And there's different views about social welfare. Some people think it's residual or you like earn your own money to take care of it. Other people think it's institutional, like, well, the government should provide this, that, and the other. But last year we got to see where the government fell short. There is a lot of places without food, even though we were thinking the government would stock it up. So again, your own individual autonomy might be important. Here's some of the 5 areas that social workers practice in. Does it keep turning off for you guys? That's weird. Like every 5 seconds or something, or is it? Okay, that's weird. So you can work in family and children's services. Oh, maybe it's running out of batteries. Health and rehabilitation. Make sure the cord is tight enough. It's weird. Mental health, occupational social work, and housing. So those are some of the areas. Here's some of our practice areas. You could be just like a referral social worker where you give people information and then refer them out. Like they come to you and say, I lost my job, I'm going to lose my house, and I don't have anything to eat. So you refer them to housing and food stamps. You could be income maintenance, helping them make that check last all the way through the month and not just halfway through the month. You could do aging services. That's usually called gerontology. You work with the elderly in nursing homes or like in hospice, which is what I do. School social work, you could get a specialty area in that while you're in graduate school. They have like 3 extra classes for school social workers. Juvenile and corrections, like when I worked at Claremont Recovery Center, I had to go visit kids that were in juvenile detention center or even the correction facilities if they were an adult at 18. And then community development. Those are like some of the other areas you can work in. When you do work in those, here's some of the stuff that you would do. So family and children services, you may do family counseling and preservation. You might do foster care and adoption. You might also do daycare stuff or prevention of child abuse and neglect. Usually neglect is the more frequent charge people come up with. You're neglecting your kid, not as often there is child abuse. And then prevention of domestic violence. So a lot of social workers work in that area. Health and rehabilitation, that would be more hospital social work or public health work. Also the maternal health work, so areas that people work in get women to proper services they need if they are pregnant, helping them get to, if they wanted to do adoptions or things of that nature, or prevention, getting them with the proper education on how to do pregnancy prevention and whatnot. Also day treatment for, I'm skipping one. Voc rehab, vocational rehab is like if you lost your job, helping be trained in a new job area. And then hospice care is like end of life for the last 6 months of your life. If you're terminal with cancer, hospice will get involved. And there's a lot of social workers in the hospice area. And people say they love that job. It's like the most rewarding social work job. Mental health, you've got mental health clinics, day treatment for drug and alcohol addiction, and then community integration. And the last one on this page is information referral. So like first call services or emergency relief and crisis management. The list continues. So there's a lot. Juvenile and corrections. You can do probation and parole services. A lot of times you don't even need a social work degree to do those. There are police social workers. There are also folks who work in detention and facilities in training schools. There's prison social workers for the adult population. Deferment programs where you could do like, say you get in trouble and they allow you to do, what do they even call that? You don't get the charges if you finish this community services. So like as a social worker, you'd be in charge of those community services. Gerontological services, so that's for the aging population. So in-home support, respite help for family caregivers, adult daycare, long-term care. If you did school social work, you would be, one of them you could do is school adjustment counseling or education testing, along with family counseling or behavior management. With housing, you can help with subsidized rent or homeless shelters and accessibility programs. Income maintenance is more social insurance programs, like Social Security, and then public assistance programs or food stamps. And then community development is for social planning, community organizing, and neighborhood revitalization. So you see there's a lot of areas and a breakdown in those areas for social work positions. And you can write your paper about any of those. Like if you decide to do the search term on one of those in specific and then write about the details in one of those right-hand columns, that's perfectly fine. There's also, social work is an agent of social control on behalf of society, a reform society, and also we are separate from society. So we try to keep ourselves, as people volunteer to come to us and ask for referral information or advising information. We're also an intermediary between individuals and society. Over to the last few slides. So here's that word empowerment again. You're going to see this a lot for like the rest of your social work career. I always say we empower ourselves by doing self-care. You make sure you get enough sleep. You make sure you eat enough vegetables and drink enough water and hydrate, whatever else you do, fine, but that self-care is going to be like healthy living, getting your half-hour exercise and all that. So the process of increasing power, that could be personal self-care, interpersonal, maybe community self-care, and or political. So finding ways to serve our community better. There's also this dual focus of psychological control and socio-political change. So we push for policies that are assistive. In the pandemic, we have had lots of checks. Are you guys old enough to get any of those freebies and checks that come from the government? Do you have to be 18 or do you have?
Like PPP?
Yeah, one of those. Or now they gave me $300 for my first kid, and they gave it to me last month and this month.
No, we ain't got no kids.
What's
We
that?
ain't getting that.
Oh,
We
you
ain't
talking
got
about
any kids.
PUA.
We ain't getting that, but
Right, but they sent checks to every adult.
Qualify for it.
You
You're
get-
not gonna get a lot though.
Okay. And then stimulus checks. Did you have to be working a job to get your stimulus checks?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Okay. So that was helpful as we had a lot of unemployment last year. And at the same time, is anybody familiar with the term inflation?
Yeah, that's when prices go up every year.
Correct. So inflation, the one thing what was weird for me to understand about inflation, last year we had about $2 trillion in circulation. If that makes sense. There's like 2 trillion $1 bills, like, I don't know, like several bands, whatever that. Now there's $4 trillion. So they've doubled our money supply. Last year we had 2 trillion. They printed up a bunch of money to keep our economy going. It was kind of fun, but we didn't create more food or more houses. So what that does is, with double the amount of money, usually it costs double the amount to buy something. So it's the same thing you're buying, like gas, milk. Have you seen $3 gas prices yet at your guys? So it was $1.50, now it's $3. A gallon of milk was $2.50, now it's like $5. I don't know. They subsidize that too. Bacon, somebody said was $4 a pound, now it's $9 a pound because a lot of pigs died off. Anything else get expensive?
Yeah, like 50 cent, 90 cent.
Yeah. So either they do that or they shrink the bag of chips and keep it the same price. So you seen the bag of chips that has like one chip in it? You're like, so they call that shrinkflation. I don't know if that's a real term, but instead of inflation, because they're inflating the prices, it's shrink, like the orange juice. They give it a different shape, and it's like 4 ounces less for the same price. Toilet paper, we mentioned, that's going on again. What else? Anybody else buy something that you're like, how did that get that expensive? Rent, that's a big one. Cost of housing, things like that. I remember paying $300 a month in 1999. That was my rent, $300 a month. And I could buy a car for like $500. I don't even think you could buy a car for. Right. That's what I'm saying. And this was a good car that, like, I think my brother and I both bought a $500 car, and he sold his after putting 100,000 miles on it for $500 still. I sold the same Honda. Like, what? Mm-hmm. Honda Civic with 200,000 miles on it. So nowadays, I think a used car is like $2,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a stimulus check might pay for some of it. So again, it's exciting to get that money. But when it raises all the prices to double, I'm like, I'd almost rather not have the money, if that makes sense. I know that sounds weird, but it's like, this check comes at a cost. So it's like, cool, thanks for the $300, Uncle Joe or whoever. But now my license plates got expensive because I switched over to an electric car, like $250 a year instead of $50 a year. So just different stuff to think about with the expenses. So your last slide of the day before I take any questions. But empowerment social work, we focus on strengths. We're like a strengths-based approach. Instead of coming at somebody with like, you're all screwed up in this area, that area, like, what are you good at? You know, like start out with the person. Like, what do you love to do? What is your strengths? What are you good? Can you work collaboratively? That's what we do as social workers. Can you critically reflect on structural arrangements? What does that even mean? That's almost too much for me. Anybody got a guess?
Might be able to adapt to any kind of change.
That's what it seems like. I know this sounds terrible, but I'm just going to go ahead and do a search on that. Paste and search. Ah. Interesting. That didn't help very much, did it? That gave me a whole lot of nothing. So yeah, I guess when you see that there is a problem on rental being, the average rental now is like $1,000 a month or something. How much do you guys pay for rent up here? I guess you don't know till you move out of the dorms or, you know.
Yeah, where I'm from in Florida, the cheapest rent is $1,000.
Is it? And then what's the average salary about? Like 25,000. So that means half your money's going to rent. Because if you're $1,000 a month, 12 months in a year, you make 25,000. It's hard to live off that. So when we critically reflect on that structural arrangement of like, why in the hell is housing half of my salary, whereas it used to be a fourth. I mean, I have to do a search on it, but it used to be, it was $300 a month, and the average social worker made $30,000 a year. That wasn't too bad, you know. That was $3,600 a year out of your $31,000 or whatever it was. It was like 10% of your income. Now it's 50% of your income. How are you supposed to go out at night or do anything or have fun or like pay for babies? That's why people are having less babies. Like our growth of, you know, new births in America has gone from like 2 per family, maybe 2 or 3. Now we're at like 1.6. So you have 1.5 kids. I guess your second kid, you got to cut it in half. We have like 1.5 kids per family. You like replace yourself, but not your wife, or your wife replaces herself and not you. So we have like a negative population growth, so to speak. Anyway, so you critically reflect on that stuff. Like, how can we make society better? How can we do things to make shit better? And then finally, link personal and political power. So that's the last one of your chapter. Which at 18, you get to vote. You guys can become politically active. You see an injustice, you do want to speak on it. I know they've made it harder because they do monitor, you know, like social media and take down things that they don't. Have you guys seen any of that on social media before? Like they'll take down a post that they think is fake news or I don't know. So there's not free speech like there used to be. It's like, I don't know. Actually, the Taliban said that yesterday. They were saying, I think somebody from the U.S. was interviewing the Taliban in Afghanistan, if you guys are familiar with what's going on in Afghanistan. And they're like, how are you going to handle free speech? And he said, go ahead and ask Facebook about that. I was like, dang, the Taliban's knocking on Facebook now. And they were like the terrorists 20 years ago. You're like, those are the bad guys. So I don't know. Nowadays, it's hard to figure. Like, you want to seek truth. You want to find what is the actual truth. It does help to go back to those basic, you know, at the very top, we had the basic needs here. Like, what are your basic needs? Food, water, shelter, human needs, universal basic needs. And then moving up from there, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we'll get into later on. But like, how can we make a better society? How can we serve people? How can we have a community that takes care of each other? And we all serve one another. So any questions on this? I know chapter 1's a lot. It's a big, broad span of everything in social work. Yeah. I could like at least put it in like one of those announcements or like I don't know which is easier for you guys. Does the announcement come through as an attachment for you? I don't know because I'm new to D2L and I used to have Schoology. But I think when I make an announcement, it sends it. So yeah, I can put that up so you don't have to keep taking pictures and try to organize it with like how am I going to find the dang notes from last? I did that last night. I took a picture of 55 PowerPoint slides. Now I got like download and it takes all this space on your phone and like how do I even organize it right? So I'll try to put it out as an announcement if that helps you guys. Yep. Any other question? Stay healthy. Keep getting your vitamin B, C, and D. Elderberry and chaga mushrooms. Chaga mushrooms are an antiviral mushroom they sell in the pill form at Walmart. I take it every day like a little pill. It kills the COVID virus. Chaga mushrooms. I'll see if I can Google it too. No, it's a pill. There it is.
Oh, you're saying chocolate? I thought you said chocolate.
That would be good too, yeah. That would be good. No, I get those. Chocolate sounds good though, like a chocolate truffle or one of those.
I know chocolate mushrooms.
I guess it's good to have a picture.
Did you want to back up?
Oh yeah. Yes, because we have another class coming up. He's in my next class. None of you guys are. If you take me 2 in a row, you get sick of me. Hell, if you take me 1 class in a row, you get sick of me. But, well, you guys have a good weekend. It's already that time, right? If you have Tuesday, Thursday classes.
It's all right if I take blue phone, right?
Yeah. You can do whatever you want. That's fine. Yep, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. Oh yeah, I gotta turn off the video stream. I always forget that. Yep. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.